guys, this is Tired Goth, and you are reading Malware with me. So I'm just recovering from having lost my voice completely. By the way, this content is not mine, it's Ariana Grande. It's a playlist that someone on YouTube actually put together, and they are on SoundCloud. I will link them. Yeah, so let's get into this. Happy New Year. It's January 1st, 2025. I cannot believe we made it to 2025. I can't believe I made it to 2025, but here we are. Here I am. So let's get into this. This paper is hosted by none other than vxunderground.org. If you haven't checked them out, they literally have the largest repository of malware samples. They're on they're just doing like free hosting stuff. They're online, they do their own hosting, and they have a separate subcategory. I don't know if I ever mentioned this, I don't believe I have, but they have a separate subcategory in the form of a website where you can actually access this stuff. I'll link that too. But it's sort of like what Malpedia does, but I'm not going to compare the two because there is no comparison. VX Underground is amazing, and they are a gateway to some of the most amazing research material ever. So go check them out, buy some merch, support them. It's totally worth it. It's worth your time. So this is actually the Zeus botnet for dummies paper, and I wanted to do a screen capture thing, but I'm still learning how to use my computer because I'm a doofus, but I'm not a doofus, but neither are you. If you don't know how to do something, all it takes is a little bit of research. So I guess let's get into this, right? So the Zeus botnet for dummies is hosted by VX Underground, but its source is malwareint.blogspot.com, and it starts out with like a screen cap of the control panel for Zeus as a malware, and you have these three sections, which I'll create like a static link to the paper and a link like I usually do, or like a source paper or whatever, as it's hosted on VX Underground. To the three sections here at the first page, you have the information, the builder, and the logs decoder. And you have an input field where you can browse a file to put that in and like kind of plug that in. And then you also have the output folder. And as you carry through the paper, it gives an explanation, because like there's an initiation or initialization, I should say, button where that input that you like put there ends up initializing a process based on what you're feeding it. So here it says, after dealing with some emphasis on the activities of the most active botnets now, Zeus, let's see a more detailed description of their crime. If we talk about malware and botnets, no doubt Zeus has a particular advantage due to the amount of zombies that are part of its campus. Now, for those of you who don't know what they mean about like zombies, they're talking about zombie processes, and zombie processes are essentially like processes, not to use the same word in the definition because that's bad practice, but zombie processes are things that are connected to apps and programs that are already running in the background that you may have active or inactive on your machine or whatever it is you're doing. And what happens here with a zombie process is that processes mimicking things that already exist start generating in the background to take up cache space and program app space. And another way that this can actually occur too is if you have Zeus somehow attached to any of your files, Zeus will start replicating files and replacing them and creating like, sort of like a mimicry of what's already there. We saw it with the Zeus Facebook implementation, where Zeus would start generating file sets that already existed for real programs and just replacing them and creating these fake links to app data that was inherent and like native to the user, something that the user would actually put in themselves, not realizing that a zombie process or something that was like just taking up space was also collecting that with intentions to either, store it and redistribute it to a server that was malicious, or alternatively, a zombie process just takes up a whole lot of room and creates like if it doesn't actually take any data, it just takes up a lot of CPU space. So if your CPU usage is at like 100%, usually a zombie process or many of them, as it were, will start taking up hundreds more percentiles of space on the machine, and you'll end up with like a 400% CPU usage when you have one app or program open. So that's generally what they do. But here you have Zeus is designed to steal any information that is stored on the computers of victims remotely and carry out other attacks aimed at stealing information such as phishing. Now, okay, phishing is one of those things where it'll typically happen in a hot link, like someone will send, or not even someone, but like a link will be generated to spread Zeus, but it'll look like something else. So it'll look like a website, it'll look like an attachment, it'll look like something that you can download onto your machine, it'll look trustworthy at some point. That's kind of the way it's supposed to, gain access to you and what you're doing on your machine. It's supposed to look like something you would otherwise be welcoming into your machine. But you can't, because if you don't know the integrity of the file that you're downloading, you end up with problems that you can't even account for later on down the line. So, the zombie campus, as it were, is essentially just a bunch of fake processes attached to something that looks, real and verifiable, but it's not. So you have Zeus is designed to steal information, so on and so forth. Another thing to keep in mind is that with the onset of mobile malware as well, Zeus is not limited to just computers that you would open up and, flip open or turn on when you're going to play video games. Like, you could have a Zeus malware, mutation that would essentially be taking your information from your phone, and it's the same way. But usually these, like, if you paid attention to the blog, there's something called smishing or SMS phishing. It's the same concept as phishing. It's the same concept as getting sent a false email or a false Facebook request or anything through, internet or browser measures, except it's rerouted through the SMS or the MMS, which is like the multimedia messaging service, which is arguably even less secure than SMS, but all of it is essentially the same type of insecurity because it's all running over GSM services anyway, which are all mobile feedback services from an internet service provider and a phone service provider, just the same. So you have these cumulative connections on a phone that haven't quite met the standard of security and privacy intelligence that some other machines have yet. But that's also because the inherent way that a cell phone is built at the moment doesn't allow for that yet. So we're on our way to developing that, I'm sure, as as a collective that's giving feedback into the insecurities that mobile devices have. But I guess we'll see how that turns out in the next 10 years. I mean, considering how many people rely on their mobile devices more frequently than a laptop that they'd be carrying around, or even their home PCs, there's a lot going on with that. That lends to the fact that there are constant and also consistent insecurities that carry over a lot. But going back to Zeus specifically, I mean, Zeus would have a field day as a mobile malware, and especially with smishing and, that particular implementation of what it already does. So, what it says here is, if we talk about the malware and botnets, which are central to browser use and, the browser connection to networks in general, no doubt Zeus has a particular advantage due to the amount of zombies that are part of the campus. Oh, I read this part already, sorry. Let's skip down. Therefore, we could say that Zeus is a spyware, but it also has capabilities for other types of malware, such as backdoors, trojans, and viruses. Okay, for those of you who don't know exactly how these things work, what backdoors, as opposed to just, I'd say trojans and viruses, right? Trojans and viruses have a similar sneaky kind of way of making their way onto a device, but backdoors are the ones you really want to worry about, because Trojans can be introduced, front-facing. They're just like, oh, look at this, it's masked and decorated as something else, right? Which is how a lot of these malwares in general obfuscate and make their way onto a device anyway. It comes through lots of stuff. It comes through, porn. It comes through gaming and gaming cheats and stuff like that. There are all sorts of methods that would appeal to the audience on purpose. in order to get that introduced to the machine. But a backdoor is something that's especially a little more malicious, because what a backdoor will do is it'll attack the core files that support the app function in the first place. So there a lot of the times you actually have apps that are just backdoors, and you'll never know it until the app starts acting up on your phone and creating a whole bunch of problems. And the way that it does this is, if you analyze an actual backdoor for the file sets, it goes straight for the core boot and the initialization files that turn an app or even a machine on and off. And it goes straight down into the core of the device to kind of blend itself in. So that way when the machine powers on, it has a trigger to allow the backdoor to start activating its file sets and rewriting stuff that's already supposed to be on your machine with malicious stuff that's not supposed to be on your machine. So you have an interesting, I guess you could say, expansion on the backdoor section of the Zeus botnet implementation specifically, but there are others that are worth paying attention to. I mean, a virus, a spyware, any kind of, where that takes a separate and expanded and unfolded form is already kind of a big deal, because it's overwriting stuff that's native to your machine, and when it's removed, it actually takes a lot more with it, and a lot of people account for it. So it's always good to back up your stuff too, especially if you experiment with your devices and you download new apps. Try to back your stuff up before you do that, so at least you have a save point. I can get into that. There are a number of ways to do that with, standard measures that are built into your device, but also alternative measures that help you do that as well, that have been developed by very friendly and helpful hackers. Not all hackers are assholes, but the ones that are, well, we'll talk about what they do. So let's see. Although we know the external face of Zeus, which is the web interface management and control of the zombies on the botnet. So web-facing meaning, it's something that you would most likely be using the internet and a browser to have any sort of vulnerability for. And it has certain features that are constantly evolving and professionalized, achieving greater flexibility and adaptability to ensure operation on different versions of Windows. So Zeus actually targets, I guess, Windows machines, because Windows is a very popular user base. A lot of people use Windows for every kind of reason you can imagine. And, it's accessible. In order to attack a Linux machine with the same kind of accuracy, you'd have to guess the kernel, the module, the flavor of Linux, the version, which updates were put into place, whether or not there were, specifically selected updates as opposed to just doing a bulk update. People like to modify their Linux boxes, and getting into the specifics of what they have modded can be very tricky and time-consuming for a hacker that's just trying to do a clean sweep of any information that's available. So, of course, the likely target is a Windows machine. So, this makes Zeus a latent threat and very dangerous for an information system. Any information system, sorry. So, the paper goes on to say, in this sense, Zeus also ensures performance working on the privilege level 3, where the applications are. For those of you who don't know what level 3 is, the applications are there, but it also kind of braids the malware into an activation where it's almost undetectable unless you're actually looking for it, because it goes into the initialization of the application itself, as opposed to just, going for the app on startup and appending something to it. It goes a little more in depth than that. So the implementation of equipment and devices which operate at the lower levels, so this is like the power on translation in the OSI layer, to, initialization of apps and services into something that would activate this malware undetected for the most part, so it can keep collecting information very subversively and very privately without being seen for what it's doing. And the reason why it obfuscates itself this way is because if it were detected and its presence was cut off right away, it wouldn't be able to collect information, and its goal is to do simply that and to evade whatever it is that would prevent it from doing so. So we have the devices which operate at lower levels. Though it may seem an irrelevant fact, this allows greater flexibility and hence a higher yield at the time of fraudulent and criminal activities for which it was conceived. The latest version of Zeus is written with version 9 of the C++ language. Now, I'm not sure if this is entirely accurate because this is a paper from 2009, and the specific date was July 11th, 2009, so I'm sure it has its adaptations that have superseded this, but among the features that have this web application, which is malicious, we can mention the FTP and TCP interceptions, and also the POP3 connections, which, for those of you who are not familiar with POP3 or any type of SMTP device information transfers, this is all routed through your mail servers. So if you are receiving emails and you're using the internet to access your transport control protocol, which is a fancy, I guess, name or acronym to discuss like how the internet actually carries your information from your machine out to the internet and back to your machine, and so on and so forth. It's any direction that it chooses to take, really. So, these are all something that Zeus actively seeks to snoop through and take information from, because it's also the most viable source of information with respect to direct contact, your personal network, your personal contacts, what it is that you would be doing on a daily basis, and what it is your incentives for communication would be, which, for those of you who don't know, makes money for attackers, for criminals, for people who want to sell your data out to other companies, agencies, or people who could be looking for you. We are dealing with some quite serious business when we're talking about information security, so the more up and up we are, the better it is for us. And I mean, this is definitely a paper that's been dated by at least a decade or so, but the point stands. If you are aware that this is the kind of stuff that can be out there, you can always adapt it with your own information and your own application to the present day, with or without me. So, this is something that could help you. But, I'm glad to be here to be the introduction and, your reliable source for what it is that you could be looking for as a point of reference, so that you will always know what to do in a situation where you could be under attack. So, if we go further down into the paper, this is only a 4-page paper, and we may actually finish this in this episode, which is not something that's often an occurrence in this show. But another technical detail is that all communication is done by Zeus through a symmetric encryption algorithm, otherwise known in this case as RC4, although we don't want to limit ourselves by thinking that RC4 is the only application where this is going to be a viable solution to detecting it. The reason being that since the internet has since been updated and revamped in a way, since this paper has been written, there are a lot more vectors that need to be explored with respect to how Zeus could be traveling through your machine, your device, and your communications to be effective. One such thing is we would want to look at how Zeus could possibly be sent upstream in a quick stream, since HTTP3 is now carrying quick information, through a byte stream that is technically encrypted but could easily be re-encrypted with malware or malicious wares there. And while the servers here, according to this paper, are the heart of Zeus and any botnet, and whoever obtains the records at the end of the collection of all the infected computers that are part of the botnet and execution of said info and said, I guess you could say, traps, this is also something that is difficult to target unless you know what you're looking for. The server is usually a remote access terminal that's set apart and off from any direct connection to what it is that you would be looking at in the malware if you were to observe it, but you can technically find trace amounts of it in the strings that are there. You may be able to find metadata. If you're really going to get into the malware analysis aspect of it, you can look for the strings themselves as they're stuck to the files, as they're written into the files, and you can do scans with malware scanner information scanning tools. I feel like I said information way too many times, but malware scanning tools like ClamAV is one. There are other implementations of this, other forks of this under different names that you can use, possibly more Linux friendly since ClamAV is Windows Central. But there are ways to look for this where you can actually pull the malicious strings, which are literally a set of like letters and numbers in sequence, that are meant to take the place of something that already had a value with its own hex string. Now, while they'll look similar, the malicious string will be effective in a different way because it will actually overwrite stuff that's not supposed to be overwritten and not supposed to be replaced in its placement, because those values hold a value and a place in that specific area of a code, of a document, of an implementation of an action file, of a function file, whatever it is. A function file is technically the action file. It's a different nomenclature when you're talking about devices, but to put it into simplistic language, the function of a file is technically what its action is supposed to be once a command is set to put it in motion. So when you can pull the string from that is causing the issue, it can kind of mitigate some of the other issues that's happening, because all of these parts are supposed to interact with one another. So if you can't, then you get an idea of where the cogs can be removed so that the machine that is, promoting the malware continuing to work kind of stop working the way it's supposed to. So on the other hand, many botnets using virtual servers to their criminal operations. Oh, that was a fragment of a sentence. However, this plays against the botnet when it is very large. If Zeus, as usual, usually the virtual servers don't have too many resources, so it's customary for Botmaster using dedicated servers to host the bot. So Botmaster, I guess, is the control panel for this or something. This is an important fact to keep in mind during the research side. Accordingly, and as every application requires a minimum of resources to run satisfactorily in the case of a botnet, the requirements are just to have 2 gigabytes of RAM and 2 times the frequency of 2 gigahertz CPU. So this is something that could easily run on a phone now. And since 2009, I'm sure there have been Zeus botnet implementations that can run on a few cores on a phone. As crazy as that sounds and as unrealistic as that could be, I mean, it is theoretically possible. And with some of the more recent cyber attacks that we've experienced that specifically target these mail and messaging transport protocols, I mean, we're talking about the OMACP layers now with smishing. We're talking about the OEM layers where these boot files would technically be initializing if Zeus ever had a hook in those. There's that too. And then really, realistically speaking, if this malware only needs a couple of gigahertz of CPU transfer speed and 2 gigabytes of RAM, this is easily something that could be carried over onto a phone and no one would even know it until it was already infecting their phone to high hell, So, it's just something to keep in mind. Furthermore, it's assumed that the computer is running an HTTP server with PHP language, of course. It's generally developed these crimewares and MySQL to create the database for the statistical information that shows the activity. Okay. I guess the way that we can wrap this up is to finish the paper and read about it, but I'm just going to give a quick interjection here. When we're talking about implementations of this, it's essentially creating a database where any of the information that's stored is going to be theoretically hidden on the device and then port its way over to a server that's connecting to the internet connection that the device is available to. So you're going to have a device that could be a phone, it could be a non-portable device, it could be a tablet, it could be anything really that you're working with that has an internet connection. And this database that the Zeus malware develops sits on the device after it's been infected and keeps feeding the information to a local internet server that's just way over there. It's nowhere on your device necessarily, but it does have a backdoor implementation or some sort of remote access to your device as if it's theirs, which is kind of creepy. We don't really want that. So, but the way that you can actually find this out is to run a scanner on your phone to see if any servers are trying to connect to something that belongs to you. But the best and most effective way that I've noticed you can actually do this is by using something called Invisible Pro if you have a mobile device. Invisible Pro is this amazing project. It's a DNS cryptase project that is a VPN, it's free, and it's funded entirely by crowdfunding. So if you are interested in helping this project, go fund them because they could change the entire direction and trajectory of their project to get even bigger and more crucial. crucially effective, I should say, for what it is that's going on in the way of internet security. They're an amazing project. They're really current, and they actually report to you the type of server interference that's trying to attach to your phone, so you actually know where it's coming from when it's detected. So there are scanner services built into these VPNs now, and they're free, and all you need to do is just help them along with a donation if you can. So that would be awesome. The VPN is called Invisible with a Z Pro, and it's an amazing service, so you can check that out. And this will actually detect stuff like Zeus and the remote access that is attempted to be made through the phishing when you click on links and all sorts of other stuff that's meant to affect, your integrity as a user, and your device integrity as something that's supposed to be supporting what it is you're trying to do on a daily basis. So let's try to wrap up the paper here. It says, another requirement is Zend with a Z optimizer, which is necessary to protect and optimize the scripts, but this is a protection for the malware, so this is also something that can be unwrapped and technically taken apart if it's discovered. So, after looking at the diagram, many wonder what the number of each version. Oh, I guess this is written in a second language. That's awesome. Good for you, man. Okay. A teaching mode could say that if we have the ABCD sequence, is what they're trying to say. I won't assume their gender. Sorry. A means a complete package of crimeware. B represents the changes that cause total or partial incompatibility with earlier versions, meaning that an update would be required to roll the malware into a new distribution undetected. C specifies error correction, added functionality, improvements, etc. D is the number of refutes or changes to the current version. So, okay, supposing you have a current version of an app or program, there is a specific number of refutes or changes or challenges to the state of its current functions to then create a different set of functions that are meant to allow the malware to start taking effect. And oh wow, I think we just finished the paper. The rest of it is just it's like referential information. There's related information to the blog and the post and everything that comes with it. It's got some excellent resources if you like to look them up. And I guess with that concludes Malware Show with me. Yeah, you read Malware with me. Thanks so much. Sorry, just getting back into the swing of my own script. Hey. So, you read Malware with me. Thanks so much for tuning in. Happy New Year. Blessings, good tidings to you. Happy, hearty, healthy, amazing everything. One of my friends been rubbing his cadence and his speech off on me. So yeah, that's a shout out to JC there. Yeah, so thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for everything. I hope you all enjoyed the show and that you all have a beautiful, happy, healthy start to your new year and that it continues throughout. Take care, guys. Love you. Be well, be safe, and stay aware. See ya.